Today, February 28th, 2026, the president announced major combat operations in coordination with Israel against Iran, and Congress found out on Twitter. Unfortunately, that's not a punchline. Over an hour passed before an official presidential statement confirmed American involvement. No declaration of war, no authorization request, no debate. Just vibes and missiles. The official story, the president, Donald Trump, says that this was necessary to destroy Iran's military capabilities and eliminate a nuclear threat. Now, if recent actions against Iran are being conducted without a formal declaration of war or specific authorization from Congress, then we have to ask the very uncomfortable question. Under what authority? Was the United States attacked? Was Congress consulted? Was there a declaration? Was there an authorization for the use of military force specifically covering this conflict? If the answer to these questions is no, which it is, then this isn't a partisan issue, it's a constitutional one. And if you ask his defenders, they'll tell you he's the commander-in-chief, like that's a cheat code. Like the Constitution came with a DLC pack called Executive Override. Sacred cow served medium rare. The president can act because he commands the military. Let me state here, not as a libertarian, not as a candidate, but as a Marine. When you raise your right hand and swear the oath, you don't swear it to a party. You don't swear it to a president. You swear it to the Constitution of the United States. And that document is very clear about one thing. Article 1, Section 8, the power to declare war belongs to Congress. Not to the president, not to whoever polls best in Texas, not to whoever gets the loudest applause at a rally. Congress. Article 2, Section 1, the president is the commander-in-chief of the U.S. Armed Forces. He is authorized to command forces after war is authorized. It doesn't mean he decides unilaterally when the nation goes to war. That distinction isn't academic. It's the difference between a republic and an empire. And that sequence wasn't accidental. The founders were allergic to kings. James Madison didn't write, "Let's trust one guy with the war button." They split the power on purpose because the executive branch is structurally prone to escalation. It moves fast, it reacts, it centralizes. Sound familiar? When a president launches major combat operations without Congress, that's not strength. That's institutional decay. We only have checks and balances in theory and push notifications in practice. And every time we shrug and say, well, this president had to act, we quietly amend the Constitution without voting on it. That's not adaptation. That's erosion. Now, let me be clear. I am running for the Texas House, not Congress. So even if I were elected, I wouldn't get to vote on federal war powers. But I do get a voice. And the problem in Texas politics right now is that not that candidates disagree. It's that too many candidates define themselves by loyalty to one man rather than loyalty to constitutional principles. You cannot claim to believe in states' rights and limited government while cheering unchecked executive war power. You cannot preach decentralization at home and applaud centralization abroad. If you believe the federal government is too big, too powerful, too intrusive, that belief cannot disappear the moment your preferred president is holding the pen. Consistency matters because this isn't about one president, it's about precedent. Here's the absurdity. We live in a country where a homeowners association needs a vote to repaint a mailbox, but the federal government can enter into combat operations before Congress even wakes up in the morning. That's not national security, that's executive improv. And spare me the nuclear threat shorthand. If we are facing a real imminent attack on the United States, then show Congress. Call the vote, stand in the light. Otherwise, if we normalize unilateral military action without congressional authorization, then we are permanently transferring war-making authority from the legislative branch to the executive branch. That's not small government. That's not federalism. That's not constitutional conservatism. That's consolidation. And consolidation of power anywhere should make Americans nervous. If commander-in-chief now means I get to decide when America fights, then we don't have separation of powers. We have separation anxiety from accountability. Sure, Democrats cheered unilateral strikes when their guy did it, and Republicans are cheering now. Apparently, following the Constitution only matters when the other team's holding it. That's not a republic. That's tribal monarchy with elections. Now some will say, well, we were just assisting Israel. Assisting how? Intelligence, logistics, direct engagement? The Constitution does not contain a clause that says war powers may be exercised without Congress if we call it assistance. The founders were very deliberate here. They feared executive war making because they had lived under a king. James Madison himself wrote that the executive is the most prone to war, and therefore the power to initiate it must be restrained. That wasn't theoretical, it was structural. And when the structure erodes, liberty erodes. So when I hear Texas primary candidates competing over who's more loyal to the current president, I don't hear ideas. I hear silence where constitutional courage should be. This is bigger than personalities. It's about whether elected officials at every level are willing to say no one person gets to drag this country into a conflict without the people's representatives debating it. That's not anti-president, that's pro-republic. As a Marine, I understand the cost of war is not abstract. It is paid in blood, time, trauma, and national debt. If we are going to fight, the American people deserve a vote through their representatives. If we are going to risk escalation with Iran, the American people deserve transparency and debate. And if our state legislators claim to believe in constitutional limits, they should be consistent when those limits apply to someone that they politically support. So what do? We stop pretending the 1787 blueprint just needs duct tape. We call a constitutional convention, not to burn down the founders' legacy, but to finish it. Restoration, not resurrection. A 21st century constitution should clarify war powers explicitly, no interpretive gymnastics. Require immediate congressional authorization for any offensive military action. Mandate automatic funding cutoffs without approval. Radical, I know, expecting accountability. The founders weren't infallible. They were innovators. And if they were alive today, they'd ask, why did you let it rot? Let's circle back. The president announced combat operations. Congress watched. The country reacted. And the Constitution just kind of sat there. That silence is the real crisis. Because once executive overreach becomes normalized, the precedent doesn't disappear when the next president takes office. It compounds. Here's the irony. The loudest self-proclaimed defenders of the Constitution are often the first to excuse it when it's inconvenient. That's not fidelity, that's fandom. And if we truly care about liberty, decentralization, and accountability, then we need to stop arguing about who holds the power and start redesigning how power is held. A 21st century demands a 21st century constitution. Not because we hate the founders, but because we respect them enough to finish the job. My campaign is not built on opposing a personality. It is built on refusing to surrender principle. Because once you surrender principle for political convenience, you don't get it back easily. A more perfect union requires courage, not just from voters, but from those asking for their votes. And courage sometimes means saying, I support the Constitution, even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's inconvenient. So here's the question. If we can upgrade our phones every year, why are we terrified to upgrade the document that governs war? Drop your thoughts in the comments and share it if you're done pretending this is normal. Let's talk about restoration, not team jerseys.